Hi folks, I'm Craig Taylor, and as always a huge thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel, the Bushcraft Padawan. It's the 9th of December today, which means that here in the UK the dark nights have very definitely set in. That probably means that for those of us that are operating out of a static overnight camp, we're probably reaching for our torches, either our head torches or our handheld torches or some other form of illumination. But I just wonder how many of us are reaching for our candles. Now don't get me wrong, I still carry a head torch and I still use a head torch a great deal at night, especially if I'm moving around, especially if I need to be able to direct the torchlight to where I'm looking. However, a lot of the time, if I'm just sat still in a static area, perhaps reading a book or doing a craft project, carving something, I don't necessarily need to be using a torch, and you could argue that it's a waste of the battery resource that is quite finite in a torch. So in this project today, in this video today, crikey, should I say, apart from doing some impromptu forestry work, in this video today, what I want to do is try and reproduce a little craft project that I discovered on the elementary bushcraft course that I did with Paul Kirtley and his team from Frontier Bushcraft. Let me see, it was April 2017, so approaching 18 months, 2 years ago. I want to try and recreate a little craft project that we did there around making an improvised bushcraft candle holder. Very, very simple. Takes minutes to do once you've got the resources together. So join me, if you will, in the rest of this video as I pull together this improvised bushcraft candle holder. Let's look at the materials then that I need to craft this small improvised bushcraft candle holder. I've got probably maybe just over 2 feet of green material here, green wood, probably about 1 inch at one end, 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch at the other end. I'm using green wood because I find it slightly easier to carve. You could also use dead wood, no problems at all. Doesn't have to be overly thick, it's not structural, it's not going to support any real weight. It's simply going to act as an upright in the ground from which to attach the candle. So it doesn't have to be an overly strong, but 1 inch, 1.5 inches, 1/2 inch, I think is more than sufficient to be strong enough that it doesn't bow in the wind, but not too thick or too heavy to make it a nightmare to actually craft. The candle itself and a piece of birch bark here. Probably a slightly bigger piece of birch bark than I really need for this project, but that's how it came off the tree, so that's what I'm sticking with. I took this green wood using my Barco Laplander, how everything else though I should be able to fashion from just using my Mora Garberg. 2 to 3 feet of green wood, about 1 inch in diameter, candle, birch bark. Let's get on with it. I've just taken my Mora Garberg, I've taken the thickest end of this piece of wood, and I've just fashioned a very, very rudimentary, simple point onto it to allow me to knock that into the ground to give me a starting point, driving that into the ground to enable this to be my upright for the candle holder. Could have used my axe if need be, but it's a relatively thin green piece of wood, very easy to carve, wasn't going to do any damage to my Mora Garberg, so I just fashioned it down to that point there. There's the pointy end of the stick, there's the currently blunt end of the stick. Just going to use my knife and very gently baton into the end of the blunt end of this stick here. I'm not trying to split the stick, I'm not trying to split it in two, shall I say. I'm just trying to create a short, maybe 1 inch or 2 deep split at the end of this stick. I'm not trying to split it into two like we would if we were batoning wood down for firewood, for example. There we can see, if I just hold that up to the camera there, you can see the knife's gone in. It's created that split there, and that's all I'm looking for. No deeper than that, no wider than that, just to create that split. Now we've got that split in the blunt end of the stick, we can ignore the stick for just a second, and we can bring into play the candle and the birch bark. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to take the candle, pop that in there, and then just use my thumbs and forefingers to just grip the candle within the birch bark itself. You can see what I've done there, just folded the birch bark in half, gripped the candle around it, and I'm holding it in place for now with my thumb and forefingers. bring the stick back into play. I can slide that birch bark into the stick split that I made. Slide it down so that the split starts to grip the birch bark. And there you can see, if I bring it back into shot, we can see that that candle now has been gripped. Get a good angle there we go. You can see the candle been wrapped around by the birch bark, and the birch bark is being pinched and held in place by that split in the stick that we made a few seconds ago. Let's see it in action. Now the ground is nice and soft where I am at the moment. It's been raining a long time. If it was slightly harder ground, then you may need to tap this into the ground. You may also need to tap this into the ground, batoning or malleting it into the ground, and then place the birch bark and candle on, because clearly you don't want to be hitting the end of this stick with this relatively delicate material on there. So you may need to take that off, hit it into the ground. The ground is nice and soft today, so we can see that's not going anywhere. This is why I said it doesn't need to be a particularly thick or strong piece of wood. It's not structural, it's not supporting anything, it's just there to act as an upright, and everything really has been done by this split in the stick and the binding effect that it has on the birch bark. There we have it, folks, a very, very simple bushcraft related project that you can knock up. Hopefully you'll see now what I meant by it. It should take you no more than 5 minutes. Finding the material, getting a bit of birch bark, sharpening one end, putting a split in the other, and then manipulating that candle and birch bark into the end, driving it into a ground. 5 minutes maximum, assuming you can find the materials, of course. I'm not saying this is perfect. It's open to wind conditions, it's open to the rain, which a torch necessarily isn't. But if the conditions are right for you, if you want to put this inside perhaps a debris shelter or underneath a tarp, somewhere where it's perhaps protected, it's not a bad idea. It gives a nice, decent, lengthy amount of ambient light to read from, to do some carving from, and doesn't place a strain on your batteries of your head torch. So what did you think? Have you done a similar project to this? Have you ever tried this out? Let me know in the comments below. Taking this principle of using the friction and the torque and the tension between this split in the end, are there any other projects that you could see around camp where it might not be a candle, but you're using a similar sort of principle, perhaps including birch bark as well? Again, let me know in the comments below. If this video has inspired you to get out there, grab a stick, a bit of birch bark and a candle and fashion this for yourself, let me know in the comments below. Also give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed watching it. There is a subscribe button in this corner of the screen here. If this video has added value, please do consider clicking on it so you don't miss out on any of my other videos. Other than that, we're approaching Christmas, we're approaching the darker nights here in the UK. Hopefully you're still managing to get out, and if you're not, hopefully these videos are encouraging you to perhaps look forward to the spring. Thank you as always for watching. Big thank you for those of you that are already subscribers. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.